Recreational marijuana should be legalized on a federal level. State-level marijuana dispensaries are seen on a federal level as criminal, and that makes it hard for businesses to operate. According to airsafe.com, the maximum amount of marijuana an individual of legal age can purchase at one time is 1 ounce or less of dried marijuana leaves suitable for smoking. This limit of sale is something that no other line of business has to deal with normally. Having a limit on the amount of your product you can sell is not great for business. If marijuana was legalized on a federal level, they would likely get rid of the sale limit. Additionally, according to BusinessInsider.com, just 220 of America's 7,600 banks and credit unions accept money from pot businesses. Effectively, this means legal pot is a cash-only business. That's because marijuana is still illegal under the U.S. law, and banks have to comply with federal regulations. This means that because of federal law, it is actually illegal for banks to accept money from businesses that sell marijuana. If marijuana was legalized on a federal level, they would not have these issues. In summary, marijuana is still illegal under federal law, meaning marijuana businesses face larger restrictions than many other businesses, including a limit on how much they can sell, and they have no way to deposit money into banks or accept any electronic currency. Marijuana is a much safer treatment for patients with chronic pain than the other opioid alternatives. According to a study from the Department of Family Medicine and Public Health and University of California, San Diego, marijuana legalization is associated with 23% and 13% reductions in hospitalizations related to opioid dependence or abuse and OPR overdose, respectively. First, to clarify, an OPR is a prescription opioid pain reliever used to treat chronic pain. This study states that because of the legalization of marijuana, there were 13% less people who needed to go to the ER because of their opioid prescribed medicine. Additionally, it contributed to a 23% reduction in people being hospitalized because of their dependence on opioids or from abusing opioids. Promises Treatment Center cites a 2009 study in American Scientist which states that one would have to use more than 1,000 times the effective dose of marijuana in order to be potentially fatal, not even a certain death. Compared to the dangerousness of opioids, marijuana is no threat. Marijuana is a much safer treatment for patients with chronic pain than the opioid alternatives. Some will say marijuana is a gateway drug, that using marijuana will lead to the use of harder drugs in the future. However, for many people, marijuana is actually being used to treat addictions to harder drugs and being used as an alternative to harder drugs. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, cross-sensitization is not unique to marijuana. Alcohol and nicotine also prime the brain for a heightened response to other drugs and are, like marijuana, also typically used before a person progresses to other, more harmful substances. They also state that the majority of people who use marijuana do not go on to use other, harder substances. People who are more vulnerable to drug taking typically start with more readily available drugs like alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana before moving on to harder drugs. However, correlation does not always imply causation. Although people who use harder drugs likely start with marijuana, it is the minority of people who use marijuana who go on to use stronger, more dangerous drugs. An article written by CNN journalist Susan Scuddy cites Yasmin Hurd, the director of the Addiction Institute at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He explains that cannabidiol is the more important compound when it comes to marijuana as a treatment for addiction. It is one of the two primary cannabinoids, along with tetrahydrocannabinol, found in the cannabis plant. He says cannabidiol reverses damage to the cannabinoid receptors themselves caused by heroin, while activating the serotonin system, the neurotransmitter system believed to affect mood and a common target for makers of anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. More generally, cannabidiol positively influences our biological systems that are linked to the negative components of addiction, such as anxiety and inhibitory control. Cannabidiol has been used to reverse damage caused by heroin in heroin addicts and helped fight off the addiction by helping reduce anxiety and improving ability to restrain or regulate strong or automatic impulses that are so common in addiction. So, people will say marijuana is a gateway drug to harder substances. This is supported by the fact that people who use harder drugs usually started with marijuana. However, correlation does not always imply causation, and it is more likely that people who use harder drugs only started with marijuana because it was more readily available. Additionally, marijuana is actually being used to help heal the damage caused by heroin addiction. Thank you.